Hey everyone, welcome to our new video on the YouTube channel. And we want to share something with you. How we are going to prepare the RB30 cylinder head. As many of you are aware, we encountered problems at Drift Masters. My brother saw that the car was failing. He left immediately, didn't even get to race. I mean, as he was heading out, I started losing a cylinder. He came to Vox quickly. We examined it with Mark and found out that one cylinder was failing. We began with the coils. You know, the typical stuff. When we turned the ignition, we noticed there was a cylinder that lacked compression. We got busy, removed the valve covers, began with the exhaust one, and discovered that one of the valves between the camshaft lifter and rocker was more than 3 millimeters of gap, and that is set to 0.30. So we knew something had gone wrong with the valve. We decided to cut the lifter to protect the camshaft and still be able to go out for practice and qualifying with one more less valve. Well, because knowing that with a bent valve, which is what we imagined had happened, running that way could lead to the breaking of that valve, which could fall into the piston and cause a disaster in the engine. So we decided, remove the tappet. We riveted the tappet guide so it wouldn't lose pressure, and we riveted it to prevent it from rising, and then we left. To practice and qualify using a valve that was smaller in the exhaust system, the car was operational. I believe we lost around 20% of power, maybe even less, but it was running fine, so we managed to save the weekend. When we arrived at the workshop, we removed the cylinder head, checked what had happened, and if the valve had indeed touched the piston, which we examined with an endoscope borrowed from Jarama. And we found out that a valve seat had dropped. Fortunately, it happened at low revolutions. The seat came loose, it got caught with the valve hit the piston, and from there we had the problem. Luckily we managed to patch it up, otherwise it would have been a disaster. That cylinder head had been mounted since 2015. It was the first head, of course. That's 10 years of racing, or I think it was due for retirement, let's say. So we had the additional issue that in the tappets, there was a lot of wear on the tappet guide. So we were also having problems with bent valves. We thought it was float related, so we swapped the valve springs this year. We believed that would fix the problem, but we found out there is too much play in the tappets. And we believe it sometimes gets caught for a moment, enough for the valve to strike the piston. And it bends just a little, but it does bend. At the end of each season, we had the engine at half compression. Nothing. We had this replacement head. My brother bought it ages ago. Well, years ago, to have it as a spare in case something happened. Now is the time to use it. This one has perfect guides. It's dirty now, but we've checked the tappet guides and they're all in perfect condition. So we are going to start the porting work. We will port the head, intake and exhaust. We will increase the intake slightly, a bit, as the collector already limits us, and it's a calculated collector. Working on it might not be beneficial. It could even make it worse. And so we will create an entry point in the knife separator so it enters faster. We will remove a bit of the bulk from the guide. We will give it a better curvature. We will polish everything and the exhaust too. We will give it a bit more exit, a bit more diameter at the exit. There is a very marked edge here. We'll round it for improved flow. Okay. And then we will go to the grinder to make seats, to enlarge the seats for the large valves, because this head comes with stock valves. And the new one has valves. The one we have has valves that are 1 millimeter bigger. We got lucky. Only the valve that hit the piston bent, We saved all the others. And well, no, there were 2 more bent very slightly. Okay, that's why we think the problem is that they even get stuck. Okay, let's start the porting work and we will explain the entire process.
Thanks for watching the video.
We marked what we will take off from the entrance. Okay, it really isn't necessary to remove more because the mouth of the collector is that size. It is already a calculated collector. It's not necessary to make it bigger. What we will work on is inside. We're going to make a knife edge entry and remove some bulk from the valve guide. We're going to give it a better curve at the valve entry and slightly remove the edge. We'll polish the whole entry, ensuring we get a better airflow rate.
Thank you, May. Thank you, Victor. Thank you.
Alright, we are in the process of porting, starting with the intake, and we can already show you the difference that we possess. We've removed all the bulk from the guide, focusing on the edge opening. We still need to smooth it out. Alright, but there's a big difference. In the lower part of the valve entry and the entry itself, we've slightly increased its size, but not significantly. We've made a knife edge entry at the edge and a nice air entry for effective circulation. You can see the difference between the two already. Let's continue. There's a lot of work to do. There's a lot of work, but with care and patience, I believe it will turn out well, and it will work. We also wanted to explain what happened with the CA18. As many of you are aware, this year I configured the buttstock just like I'm doing with the RB. Well, the intention was to gain power, logically. However, the contrary occurred. We lost around 10 horsepower, and you may wonder, why are you doing this? Why are you doing the same thing? The explanation is very simple. In the CA18, we have a problem with the turbo. It has a turbo that's too small to function with the power levels it's operating at. It's a turbo that should ideally deliver around 400 horsepower, yet we reached 443 horsepower last year. What happens? At the peak, we can't sustain the same pressure. We must decrease it. Because of the turbo's AR, functions like a blockage, stopping the exhaust gases from exiting. So what occurs? Exhaust gases accumulate inside the combustion chamber because, let's say, there's insufficient circulation, and it starts to enrich the mixture because it can't evacuate all the exhaust gases. Danger, of course, when the mixture enriches and at the top there is a risk of this engine failure. So what did we do with Gerard? What Gerard did is at the very top, as we passed the 6500, we reduced the pressure from 1.4 to 1.2 to allow the engine time to expel those gases and keep the mixture at a consistent richness so that everything worked perfectly. What was the issue? When we used the factory head, we could maintain 1.4, until 7500 RPM, which is the cutoff point. Without any problems, it would run a bit rich, but it held up well and produced 443 horsepower. What occurred when we ported the head? Gerard quickly mentioned to me at the bench that the porting was quite evident since the car, using the same electronics as last year, needed significantly more turbo. At half throttle, the engine demanded air. It needed plenty of air and had to raise the turbo a lot at half throttle since the engine wanted air. But what happens? If there's a problem, if you increase the intake without enhancing the exhaust, what occurs? The issue becomes more pronounced. The issue escalates, meaning we're pushing in a lot more air while still having the same restriction in the exhaust at the turbo. So the issue we faced previously has intensified, leading us to reduce the turbo to 1.2 as we were becoming excessively rich, and at 7000 RPM the power curve plummeted. So to maintain that curve at the 433 horsepower it generated, we must keep it at 1.2 to sustain it. What's the next project? Together with David Reyes and Turbomaster, we plan to install a turbo suitable for these new generation power levels. David will design an exhaust system, a new collector to achieve a top mode with V-band. And we will set up an external wastegate, and hopefully the invention, or rather the work we did on the cylinder head, will pay off, and we should be able to surpass 450 horsepower without any issues, but only with the proper turbo. In the RB, we won't have any issues, because with the turbo we have now, we can deliver a significant amount of intake flow, since the exhaust will be more than enough. Therefore, I think this work will lead to noticeable improvements, and we are porting more than the previous head was. We hope that the additional porting will provide a slight increase in airflow, allowing us to enhance the power just a bit more. The intake manifold is complete, including all 6 cylinders. We just need to now sand it and leave it polished. Well, it's all done now. Everything is complete. Now we begin working on the exhaust system. We've marked what we want to cut out. We have marked what we want to take off, which is all this excess bulk here and a bit more. We have placed the gasket and marked with it because making it larger than the gasket doesn't make sense. We'll cut inwards just like we did for the intake. Hopefully that will help us get better airflow. So, after countless hours of work, a lot of milling, using the small mill and various cutters and various sandpapers, we selected to ensure it is completely polished. We already have the cylinder head done. We have completed all the porting for intake and all the exhaust porting is done. We have also worked on the valve ports. We smoothed all the edges and polished everything. We also improved the flow for intake and exhaust. Well, it's finished now. Set to go to the machine shops to machine the valves and fit them. We need to replace the guides that are coming. So also, when changing the cylinder head, we had this done for the other head, but we need to tweak the camshaft a bit. As these cams open an extra millimeter, the cam strikes the aluminum of the head. Therefore, we take off the aluminum, and it shows that it doesn't strike. So this is the camshaft of the exhaust, and you can see that it doesn't hit. It spins and doesn't hit. Next we will implement another modification which we believe is partly to blame, is the lifters. We use a solid lifter, it's a modified lifter, to extract the internal parts, and we adjust this thickness as needed. The problem with this that we think could happen is that this entire assembly is rather cumbersome and heavy in weight. The spinning causes valve float, which theoretically is resolved with stiffer springs. Now we have lifters from Tomex that arrive empty inside and only have the center. Directly from the base, there's a straight pin with the center, and the thickness goes on top of the valve, between the taquet and the valvula. With this, we hope to resolve all the issues we faced regarding bending valvulas, and that it goes well this time. Here we have the old cylinder head. You can see the porting that was previously done. You can see the bulges created by the valvula guide. This one is very ported on the interior, especially in the center, and less so on the sides. It worked fine. So para dernier, here we have the intake and exhaust sides. You can see some of the edges I talked about earlier that we removed from the other head to increase flow. Here you can see the bulge of the guide, which is a bit more restricted. Then we have here the exhaust too. You can see the bulge of the guide, and it is less ported than the one we just created. Now we will take the other one so it can be seen. Here is the exhaust side. You can see that the guide bulges are not there. The guides that were worn out are missing, but here are some new guides. The guides will be included. It is more open, more worn in the middle, more worn on the sides, and especially the bulge of the guide. Above all, here we have seen before that everything is polished, more open, and the intake too is significantly more open than before. Let's hope that we notice an improvement in performance, because when it comes to cylinder heads, it's known that sometimes you make a bigger step and lose power.
Let's hope it yields good results, that it gives us better performance, and soon we will know.
Once we have everything set up, we're going to GMC Sport to Gerard, and we'll look the price. Well, we hope you like the content we are creating. We'll keep you on the lookout for the next video. This one concludes here. We've given a brief explanation. Now we're just waiting for the lifters and valve guides to arrive. The machine shop is next. Next, we'll see Goyo to recalculate the spring hardness with the thicknesses we'll use, since it will change the valve height and we need to check it again. To check it. And we are just 20 days away from the race. Everything is tight. The materials are from the US. Let's hope they arrive next week. And next Tuesday we'll move on to the next steps. We have the dynamometer ready and we hope to be on schedule. Alright, see you in the next video.